Okay, my name is Tyler Cunha, and I'm here with the NCTC's undergraduate honors class, and we will be talking about fighting food insecurity in Africa. This project's more centered towards Kenya, but this problem is actually really widespread in all of Africa. Now, to start off the project, I'm actually going to present to you a statistic. And what the statistic says is that the World Health Organization's emergency threshold for acute malnutrition ends at 15%. While Kenyans with acute malnutrition is anywhere between 24 and 37%. Already, the country of Kenya is in a state of emergency. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to present to you some of the problems why Kenya struggles with food insecurity and break it down for you. So the biggest part of food insecurity, and the number one factors of why it exists today, is because of water scarcity. Now, in Kenya, rainfall is scarce. Here is a chart of the average rainfall per month that happens in Kenya. And as you can see, it's relatively low. There are some days here in America that we get more rain in a day than they do in an entire month. And so you can see why water is so scarce. Because water is so scarce in Africa, it affects farming in a number of ways. Not only is water so scarce for production of food, but it also affects the fertility of soil. It also affects erosion. It affects a number of factors that makes farming and food production very difficult. I actually have a chart over here to my side that actually presents some of the biggest issues that water has brought in comparison to food insecurity in Africa. Another factor that also influences the food insecurity in Africa is the average temperature. It's very high, as you can see on the chart, that the average temperature for the year sits at around 85 degrees, which is very hot for plants, at least. Because of Africa's state of food insecurity, other countries around the world are having to bring in food for Africa. That alone is a really big issue because there's a lot of faulty procedures that happen in this process. As you can see on my left, I have a chart of the process of food distribution and production and how it gets passed out to the people. Now, while this seems very straightforward, there's actually a lot of things that happen in here that promote disease and it promotes unfair distribution. As you can see with some of the different causes that I have over here, a lot of bad things actually happen because of food distribution, which is meant to be a good thing. One example that I have of unsafe practices that brought about disease is the aflatoxin outbreak that happened in 2004. As you can see, there was a spike over here on the right-hand side of the graph that is very abnormal. Aflatoxin is a fungus that infects corn and maize, and the farmers actually did not catch it, and because of that, it was distributed to people that resulted in disease and death. So some of the stuff that we have to help improve the process of food distribution involves having the government work with the different organizations that help pass out food. We also have regulation standards and many other different kinds of methods that we can use just to essentially help food distribution for it to be safe and for it to be, effective and efficient, because you don't want to have to be held back on cost because of slow processes. But if we were to actually talk about the big issues that are affecting Africa right now, the long-term issues that have been affecting Africa since, people have lived there, a lot of that has to do with water scarcity. I mean, essentially what the government has done to try to handle food insecurity. A lot of attempts to address food security actually ended hurting Africa more than it actually helped it. One of those was to actually set quotas for independent farmers to actually grow a certain amount of food in a specific time. Now, because Africa has a very small resource base for soil and all the nutrients that are in the soil, it was very difficult for them to do that. And what ended up happening is that they used a technique called nutrient mining to actually meet the quotas. And that actually ended up hurting Africa's soil by actually expediting desertification. Some other policies that they instituted to help meet food production quotas was to actually implement cattle livestock management that actually also hurt Africa. I actually wanted to bring to your attention a quote by a man named Richard Hogg. He was an economist and a scientist who participated in a conference about Africa's food insecurity, and this is what he said. Overgrazing due to improper livestock and range management is one of the principal causes of desertification in Kenya. These claims lead us to believe that Africa's problem in food security, while ecological in nature, is partly the result of poor agricultural policy. So, what does that mean? That means that the policies that we instituted to help production actually hurt production in the long run. Another set of policies that I want to also bring to your attention, while it's more indirect on the ecological effects of Africa, it's also very big. The international trade policies that Africa has instituted and followed actually have not helped Africa develop into a second world country. Here on the left hand side of me, you can actually see a chart of the average income per capita for Africa in comparison to other developing countries across the world. Africa is the gray line, other countries are the black line. As you can see, Africa's income per capita has not seen rates of growth in about 40 years, and even before that it was extremely low. And so with all of these issues, we can actually see why Africa is hurting right now. Not only are they not growing, they are having to face some of the biggest struggles in the world to feed their people. So what are some of the solutions that we have? Well, short-term solutions such as providing foreign aid to Africa with food and with capital will work. It's such a short-term issue. One of the things that I suggested for this project into fixing the issues for Africa is international trade development, and I believe that is a very big aspect. What they need to do is specialize in exports that other parts of the world have a hard time specializing in. Some of the categories of exports that they can specialize in that they already have started are categories such as gold, oil, diamonds, and other resources that are actually pretty scarce throughout the rest of the world. But there's a problem with that, and that's that Africa does not have a lot of capital to really specialize in those exports. So one of the things that we can do to help that is outsource to Africa to help build their economy, or be able to provide capital for them to start doing it themselves. So that's the first step in Africa trying to get out of this hole. The second thing that they would need to do is that once they develop some capital is to start investing in themselves. According to a man named Robert Parlberg, who actually did a lot of research on Africa's economic state, stated that Africa tends to invest in other countries more than it does in itself. Now that's an issue because if they don't have capital, they can't grow, and if they don't invest, they can't grow. So once they do actually start to get capital, they need to start doing that. Now one thing they can really start on is expanding their irrigation. According to Robert Parlberg, who also analyzed the amount of land that is irrigated in Africa, matter of fact, he might have actually gotten this from a different source, only 4% of Africa is irrigated. Now, if you don't know relative irrigation percentages for other countries, I can tell you that America is 18% irrigated. China is even more. Now, I would believe that would be the first successful step in capital investment that Africa needs to do to get out of this food insecurity slump. After irrigation takes place, one of the things that they definitely need to start doing is implementing new scientific methodologies that help food production. We have developed new scientific methodologies that help conserve water to a very high ratio between, input and output. A lot of these new methodologies need to take place so that every bit of Africa's natural resources can be implemented efficiently. I really do believe that with America's and the rest of the world's help that Africa can really get out of this slum. And that's basically my entire presentation. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'd love to answer your questions. I want to go ahead and give a special thanks to my professor, Rochelle Gregory, who actually is the teacher for this class and helped us get on board with Care Highway International. They are a humanitarian organization that already provides aid to Kenya by providing children with medical, nutrient, and physical needs, and also education. They have worked really hard the past 15 years to really provide as much help as they can, and if you click on the little icon next to me, you can go to their website and you can actually become a donator for them. And that's it for my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you can hop on board with Care Highway International to be able to help all the people in Africa that need our help. Thank you. Goodbye.